It's time. I'm finally releasing it. This is my recipe for perfect super juice. And as a bonus, some fermented citrus scrap cheong. This is the latest iteration of my super juice recipe. I've been tweaking it and playing with it for like a year, a little over a year maybe. There's a full super juice breakdown video with like everything you could ever want to know about super juice on the channel, so go watch that. Lots of research went into it, lots of procrastination, and it's there now, so please go watch it. So all of this wasn't in vain. But for today, we're gonna be making super juice. I'm gonna walk you through it. I'm gonna give you all the tips and tricks and share basically what I think is the next best thing to fresh juice that you can get, that you can make at home. So let's do it. Ready? Okay, let's go. I'm gonna do the thing where you're like, you will need, for this recipe for super juice, to get started with your journey into super juice, the superior juice, if you ask me. These are all the things you're going to need. We'll start with the ingredients. Obviously, you'll need citrus. We're doing lime today, but the same things kind of apply to all the different citrus. I like to pick out limes that have this like kind of nice bumpy skin where you can see the pores. That is going to give you a lot more oil than the really slick. See how this skin is a little bit more smooth and slick? And this one's kind of got some more bumpy pores. This is actually gonna have more oil and fragrance than this lime. Some limes you'll find at the store are like really, really smooth. Those I tend to have a harder time peeling and they have less oil. Will actually give you more juice. So that's a good thing to note. If you have a really smooth, plump, kind of squishy lime, that's gonna have more juice. Whereas the more bumpy, rough ones are gonna have more oil. The bumpy ones are really good for super juice. Moving on, we have salt, sugar, malic acid. This one you'll have to probably get online, and you can look on our shop and it's there. Citric acid is pretty widely available everywhere. I think you can get it at like Walmart and stuff now, so you should be able to find this at least. You just want to use food grade acid, so just that's really the main thing you're looking for, is make sure it's food grade and it's not for like, I don't know what you would be using it for otherwise. The citric acid is gonna give you that really like tart, lemony acid, that puckering lemon, whereas the malic has more of a drying green apple lime taste. So for lime, we're gonna use both of these in a blend. Speaking of blend, you'll need a blender for this project. I really like a stick blender or an immersion blender. I think they're like an incredible bar tool. This one is wireless. You don't need any special blender, but you will need a blender. A Y peeler or some kind of peeler, like a potato peeler could work. I think you could even do it with a knife if you like were patient and had a really sharp knife. I definitely recommend a Y peeler like this. I like this one from Expo because it has really nice ergonomic grip. That way you won't like, yeah, whatever, we don't need to talk about that. You'll need a couple of vessels. I like these glass ones. This is a weck jar and this is a Pyrex that we use for stirring drinks. These are nice, you can use whatever you want. I also really like these plastic delis. These are like my favorite kitchen thing ever. Just deli life is the way, it's the way. And then I also like these squeezy bottles. So I'll usually make a big batch and then transfer a little bit into the bottle for use right away, and then I'll freeze the rest. So you'll need some water. I recommend using, good water. Don't use nasty water. Obviously recognize that your water will affect the juice. So, kitchen scale. I have two. I have this kind of like more fine scale. This one can like detect a lot lower amounts of things, so it's more precise. This one, anything under like 2 grams, it has a hard time reading. So I like this fine one for the acids. If you make bigger batches, you can probably just get away with a regular kitchen scale. And I recommend like making a decent amount if you're gonna do it. Lastly, we have a strainer and a cheesecloth. So I just use like this cocktail fine strainer, tea strainer, whatever. And then I like to line it with some cheesecloth. You don't have to, but the finer you strain it, the longer it will last. Particles are in the juice, the more it will oxidize and go bad. So definitely wanna strain it as fine as you can. All right, let's get into it.
Can I break?
Yeah. First things first, you want to wash your limes. These are from the market, so they are not waxed, but you may have waxed limes. And you can tell by like scraping them or whatever, if there's a wax on them, you can tell they're kind of tacky. You definitely want to get that off. Obviously, like you want to get the dirt off or any pesticides, anything that you don't want in your juice, you want to get off the limes. So wash your limes, first thing. peel your limes. This is what you want, more or less. Like very thin peel. You don't want to go very deep on the limes. You want to leave all that white pith behind as much as you can. See, there's like a little bit on there, but that's okay. The more of that like white pith you get, the more bitter your juice is. So I mean, I've had like some people make this super juice and be like, it's really bitter. It like doesn't really work as like a lime replacement. That's why. So it's important to take your time with this step. As limes get older, the skin is a lot drier and it starts to tear and it won't really peel as easily. So fresh, really beautiful limes are way easier to work with. So whenever you do your citrus day, just make sure you go out and get some nice, delicious, fresh looking limes and use those, because if you try to use the crusty old limes, it really just doesn't work out and it's not going to taste very good because the oil has kind of gone off and it's just not going to be as good. You got to use fresh lime. See? If you're like me and you have kind of a dull Y peeler, we've had this for years, so it's not the sharpest thing. You see how there's that like pithy kind of white stuff on there? I like to just go in. This is like the most labor intensive part of the recipe really, but I like to go in with a sharp knife. This one's not very sharp. I like to go in and kind of shave it down, but anything that's like really kind of a little thicker than you want, I'll go in and like, you know, just kind of get it off like this. That's gotta go. I know that that seems like really tedious and kind of annoying, but look at all the pith that we got off, and it only took me like maybe a minute or two to do it. You can avoid having to do that if you just have a really sharp Y peeler. It's really gonna make a difference as far as the final juice, and super juice is like overall a very time-saving practice. As far as like juicing everything one at a time is kind of whatever. Just do it, okay? The other thing I wanted to mention is you want to work relatively quickly. I mean, it's not like a rushing thing, but these do dry out, so you don't want to let them sit for like ever, you know, because then the oils kind of, it's not as good. So make sure you work a little bit fast. Next up is just weigh your peels. So we're at 28 grams. I have a calculator for all of this, so in the description, if you want to check out our super juice calculator, you can look there. So we put our peels in, 28, and then that's gonna give us our measurements for everything else. Wait, has that not? There we go. See how that worked? The ratios are as follows. The peel is 10% of the amount of water, and then we have 1% sugar and 0.5% salt. And then our citric and malic is 6% of the total of the water, split between the two. So if you needed to do the calculations, that's the ratios. It's a lot easier to just use a calculator, obviously. So that's what we're gonna be doing. My recipe is a combo of what I liked about everybody else's recipes, as many recipes are. I like to use my little scale for this part, and I'll have like my little deli, zero it out, and then we can just read off exactly what we have to put in here. So I find that my bar spoon is a good tool for this. It's about like 3 grams per spoonful, I found, yeah. So we need 11.2 grams of citric for this particular batch. This part, like as far as like the 11.2, it's not like super imperative that you like nail it on the, see that's 11.57. So that's a little bit more, totally okay. Naturally, citrus is going to be a little bit sour or a little bit sweeter depending from fruit to fruit. It's not like an exact thing. It's really not gonna like make a huge difference in the end product. You wanna be pretty exact, but I just mean like, if you're off by like 0.3 grams like this is, it's not a big deal. You won't be able to tell. I got my citric, and then we need half that amount of malic, so 5.6. So that goes in. This is where our recipe varies from Kevin Koss and some of the other ones that are more popular. I think in Kevin's original recipe, he says that he doesn't add sugar to avoid fermentation happening or any kind of degradation in that sense. I think that the amount of sugar we're adding is not enough for it to really like be a problem as far as like spontaneous fermentation goes. I also like to keep my juice frozen, so that also prevents any fermentation from occurring. We're using 1% sugar. I think in natural juice, it's about 2 or 3% sugar. So this is less sugar than you would find in like a fresh pressed juice, but I find that it's really nice and almost necessary to add and to balance the like raw acids of the malic and the citric. Whenever we were making it at first without that, it has like this like sour warhead thing going for it, which can be a little aggressive when you're tasting the juice by itself. You can barely tell, I guess, like in the final cocktails. Sometimes it depends.
I think you can tell.
You can tell. So we are adding sugar to ours, and again, that's just for balance. I think that it really adds to the natural lime flavor. It tastes more like real lime to me with sugar. We add 1% sugar, so in this case, it's gonna be 2.8 grams of sugar. That's too much. Okay, salt. Freaking, I love salt. Salt also adds to rounding out the flavor, softens the like acid punch. You can completely omit this and it's okay, but I think that it helps to boost the flavors and gives it a more round, kind of like softer vibe. Yeah, just like a pinch. The next difference between our recipe and some of the other recipes. In the original recipe, they call for making an Oleo citrate. So it's basically an Oleo saccharum, but with acids. In Art of Drinks video, he made a really good point of basically we're gonna blend this and emulsify the oil into the liquid pretty aggressively. It's not necessary to allow the powders to suck up all of the oil in the peel because we're just gonna basically blend all of that together anyway. So you can skip this like waiting step. Another thing is some people have said that allowing this Oleo citrate to sit a little bit too long does affect the flavor of the juice. So that's another thing to consider as well. We're just gonna completely skip the Oleo citrate step. So we're just gonna emulsify it with the blender. We gotta add our water. So in this case, 280 grams or 280 mils. To do this, you wanna blend for a good minute. Like you want to make sure that everything's completely broken up and that we're extracting all of the oil and emulsifying it all into the juice. You want to blend until you're pretty confident that all of the acid, sugar, salt is fully dissolved and all of the oil is emulsified into the water. Here we have basically super juice, more or less. It smells extremely limey and fragrant. It smells great. Next step is just give it a good strain. So I like to wet the cheesecloth just so that the cheesecloth doesn't suck up all the juice that we just made, you know?
It doesn't look wet at all.
And that's that. It really isn't all the way wet, but you want all this this pulp stuff because we're gonna save that
for a little secret surprise later, right?
Yeah, stick around to the end of the video. While this is straining, I will go ahead and juice my limes like normal. I'll just juice it straight into here and everything will mix in and then we're basically done. So I do 1, 2, and then here's a little secret for you, a little bonus secret. I like to take the 2 buttons or whatever, halves, and give it a second squeeze. Look at that. It's a good quarter ounce.
I like to take them and put them in half.
Like this? Yeah. So you can kind of fold them in half like that.
Yeah. Oh, God.
And give them another squeeze. And we can really get all the juice we can out of these. However, there's still lots of juice left behind in these little capillaries or the little caviar pulp stuff. But we're not gonna let that go to waste either. So coax it in, encourage it.
Yeah, there you go.
That's basically it. We have made super juice. So what we have here is 400 mil, looks like, from 4 limes. So pretty good, about 100 mil lime. That's a good yield if you ask me. It smells really, really good. I'm gonna give it just a quick stir. Yeah, I'm gonna sip it right out of the jug. Woo. Yeah, it's good. It's super limey. This is really interesting. You can tell the differences between different kinds of like limes, almost the terroir or whatever. Really, really delicious. My mouth's salivating. It's like extremely flavorful, extremely punchy, limey, soft. It doesn't have that really intense raw citric malic acid thing that I think some of the other recipes that we've tried do have. I think it's a really solid juice and I'd be happy to put it in any cocktail. In fact, we mostly use super juice for all of our recipes and now you can make our official recipe of super juice. The last thing I do usually is I'll take the juice I've made, I'll bottle up one, this is like 200 ml, 250 ml bottle at a time. and I'll keep this ready to go in the fridge for drinks. And then I'll take what's left and I will label it and date it, and then I'll pop that in the freezer and it'll be ready to go to thaw whenever this is done. I just pull this out, let it thaw overnight, fill it back up. I'll have juice for, yeah, basically indefinitely in the freezer, and then after you pull it from the freezer, it'll last about a week and a half to 2 weeks maybe before it starts to get a little metallic. So you'll be able to tell when it's off. By the time 3 weeks rolls around, it's usually a little metallic. Some other things to consider: adding the sugar does shorten the shelf life slightly from what we've tested. However, I like the taste better, so that's a trade-off. I usually like to do 6 to 10 limes at a time, and that makes over a liter, usually, like a liter and a half. You can make it with all kinds of citruses. There's different ratios for different citrus, and you can look at our calculator and see the differences with those. The last thing that I wanted to show kind of as a bonus recipe is I like to take the leftovers. Here's what we're left with out of those limes. This is all that's left. We have our husks. Throw all the husks in there, and then I'll dump the remaining pulp, really the peel. But this peel has lots of like flavor still and a lot of residual tartness and oil. We're just taking what's left over, and then I'll just take some regular old sugar. I suggest, like, if you want to be more precise, you can weigh this and then put an equal amount of sugar. Most of the time I don't do that though. I just kind of straight up like cover it with sugar. Just like that. I don't really measure anymore because this is kind of like a little bonus thing. But I'll just take it. I mean, I most of the time won't even mix it like this. So this is a lime scrap citrus cheong, so a lime cheong. Cheong is like a fermented syrup that originates in Korea. It just consists of like putting sugar on fruit and allowing the natural osmosis to happen. So the sugar is hydrophilic, which means it sucks the juice from whatever's left. And it's just a way of like extracting every last little bit of citrus flavor out of these basically scraps that would normally go in the trash. That way we're sitting with lots of juice and a nice delicious lime syrup that you can use for ferments like sodas. I also like to add a little bit of like Wray and Nephew rum and kind of make a little citrus cordial. It's delicious as a syrup in cocktails like daiquiris or whatever. And it has a nice complex, slightly bitter, citrusy, sour, fermenty flavor. It's super, super good. You can take your lime cheong and just leave it on your counter for a day and you'll have like a nice syrup. Or you can let it sit for like a week and it'll start to bubble and ferment. Then you can go ahead and turn it into a wine or like a lime soda, like a probiotic fizzy soda. And there's some more videos on our channel. Let me know if you want to like full walkthrough on that. I'll put some video of like what it looks like. But yeah, that's it. There you have it. That's our official super juice recipe and a little bonus fermenty lime cheong. Nothing goes to waste. Everything tastes really good. Try it out. Let me know what you guys think. Yeah, go watch the video about the history of super juice and kind of all of the behind the scenes stuff. Hope you enjoyed this recipe. Let me know what you think if you try it. And yeah, I'll catch you guys.